So many times we are trained as women to stop listening to our intuition. That's one of the biggest things I think that we could reclaim for ourselves is our intuition. That and our forgiveness of ourselves. You get to decide what parts of yourself are you going to highlight and what parts are you going to hide.
So many times we just do not have the capacity or the opportunity to take this inner risk to accept that, oh, I have this identity in me. Whenever we're going through something, it's important to respect this process.
Finding things that will help you in the morning get out of your funk. And super important, the first thing in the morning is to make sure you get your mindset straight. Failure is honestly the best thing that can happen. And I didn't know that growing up. And I think that's a huge lesson, is you got to take the risk.
Welcome to Who Would Have Thought? This is the space where we go deeper beyond the successful success stories, have real vulnerable conversations about what brought people to where they are now, how their pivots, failures, and challenges impacted their lives and what helped them and didn't move through them. Today, for our inaugural episode, I'm excited to bring you Joy Wiggins. She's an international keynote and TEDx speaker, author, and creator of Cultural Agility Change Model, the leadership skill set that blends emotional cultural intelligence to lead effectively across difference. With a background in anthropology and identity theory and a PhD in language education and society, Jo brings over 2 decades of experience helping leaders navigate cross-cultural complexity with clarity, curiosity, and strategic impact. Jo is the co-author of From Sabotage to Support, a new vision for feminist solidarity, a book that digs into why women sometimes compete with each other, how those patterns get internalized, and what it actually looks like to move into real collaboration. It's a powerful mix of both deep research and lived experience, and it offers a clear path for women to support each other instead of working in isolation and comparison. She is also the founder of Joy Abroad, where she supports women and families make informed, emotionally grounded, values-aligned moves abroad, especially when money, language, or culture makes those shifts difficult. Mm-hmm. At the heart of her work is one mission, helping people step into new cultures, new environments, and new versions of themselves with confidence, clarity, and the skills to thrive. Today, we're diving into her journey, the honest moments behind the milestones, her experiences with therapy and inner work, and the daily practices that keep her grounded. I am so happy she's here with us. Let's get into it. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sasha.
Thank you so much for coming. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. We were just talking about getting ready this morning, and so I normally am in sweats. So today I was like, all right, I have my set outfits for professional endeavors. And so it's a beautiful day in Lisbon, and I'm just happy. I always say this to people. I'm just happy to be here. So
beautiful. It's a joy to have you with us. As we were chatting, I also, for our first episode, had to sing some mantras in the morning to awaken my voice. So it's definitely a special moment, and it's amazing that we're opening this deep space of reflection and sharing in such a great company. So I'm really happy that we're doing this. Let's start with the beginning. So you earned your PhD in multicultural education, worked for nearly 2 decades as the professor before transitioning into consulting and speaking. I feel there's so much work behind the scenes.
Yes, there is.
Of this successful journey, and our listeners would be benefiting a lot from hearing more about it from yourself.
Yeah. So kind of how did I get here? I'll try to be brief because I'm 51, so there's a lot there, which is funny because I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm in my 30s. But so I first went to college, and I'm a military brat. So my dad was in the Army, and so we moved every 3 years. And we had to learn how to adapt very quickly all the time. And so my family we love to move every 3 years, all of us. So I have 2 sisters and my mom. My dad passed when I was 23. But what that taught me was how to be like a cultural chameleon and how to quickly adapt to different behaviors. And I can read a room really pretty quickly. And what being in the Army did with my dad was my mom's dad was in the Air Force and my dad's dad was in the Army. So we come from a long line of military. And everything in the military is very rank and status. It's all about who salutes to whom. And so you can see power physically happening. So I was really interested in that. So I would go see my dad at the hospital. He was an administrator. And I would see who would salute to him and who he would salute to. And so it was very interesting to see how they would react with each other. And so I was very interested in power. I started becoming more and more interested in culture. And then I also was really looking at how did I move through the world, adapting to different cultures within the United States, living in Germany as a child, then moving to China. And I started to realize how quickly I had to read a room, sometimes for survival, maybe social survival, but even, as a woman being like, physical survival too. You have to read a room pretty quickly. And so once I started college and I was an English minor and I started really looking at multiculturalism and all these different avenues that I could take. And I met a couple professors that I really liked. And I thought, I really want to be a professor. I want to teach children's literature. I want to teach, identity. I want to really get deep with literature. And then I got my master's. I couldn't find a teaching job after my master's, so I moved to China. And this is the beginning, I think, of when it's really important to take a risk, because I've taken risks before, like physical risks, and I'd bungee jumped. And my mom was telling me a story last night about my dad skydiving against his parents' wishes. So she's like, Joy, you come from a long line of risk takers. And what I thought at the time was I can't find a job in Washington State where I was. So I walked into this building I rarely walked into on campus, and I saw this sign that said Teach in China. And I was like, I guess I'm going to China. And I ripped it off and I was like, I'm going to China. And I really didn't think it through, which is kind of part of, a risk taker, right? They don't always think the whole thing because you could talk yourself out of anything. So, and then the same thing with Portugal. I was just like, you only live once. You have to take risks. And when I came back from China, it opened my eyes to different cultures, how to navigate cultures. This was in 2000 to 2001 that I lived there. So China had just opened up. So I had my doctoral candidate interview while I was in China. And they thought that was really cool. So they were able to look past my terrible GRE scores and look at what I was actually doing and what I could bring to the program as a student. So when I came back from China, it was the day after 9/11 in the U.S., so 9/11, 2001, which, of course, changed everything again. And so I was coming back having reverse culture shock, and then 9/11 happened, and then I started my graduate program. And all of those things kind of led up to me choosing, it's now called Language Education Society. At the time, it was just education or literacy education. I don't honestly even remember what it was called. But I started taking anthropology classes and all of that. And so and looking at power and critical race theory and critical legal studies. And so that put me on a trajectory to helping teachers understand the power that they bring in their classrooms and the ways in which our history and our society, especially in the U.S., has shaped what opportunities people get and don't get. And depending on your identity and where you fall in kind of the rank and status of society. So people of color, women, people with disabilities, people of LGBTQI orientation, like all of those things, nationality, language, all of those things really affect our access to opportunity. So I was most interested in that. And so fast forwarding into finishing up my doctorate, I went into the University of Texas, Arlington, for 7 years. I was a professor there. Then I went to Western Washington. I wanted to have a child. And what happened with the book was that I noticed that women in academia were sabotaging each other. So that kind of led into, once I got to Western Washington, I had had my daughter. I got to learn what that was like to be a parent. And then I was like, well, it's really hard for women to be a parent, to have, a partner that actually supports them. And then it just changes your whole life perspective of what's important in this world. And so, that kind of led into the TED Talk. The TED Talk then led to the book. So, yeah. And then now I'm in Portugal. I went to corporate too. I did do that. But so all of these things, each of these things took risks. Like going to Western Washington was a big risk. And going into corporate, leaving academia, which was what I knew so well. It's all I'd known, really, was academia. And I had corporate clients as a consultant, but I'd never been on a team in corporate. And so that was a big risk as well. So
I'm hearing a lot of fascinating things about your trajectory at the moment and about your path. One of them is that in the face of the risk, right, in the face of adversity, you were, rather than assuming the victim mentality or the perpetrator or going into this Kaufman triangle of, the world is going against me or something like this, you instead took the step to kind of push back from this challenge and create the new reality for yourself, upgrade to the next level, do something with it. When you were experiencing your upbringing in the military, you were fascinated by the power, so you decided to study it more and understand what this is about rather than succumbing to the victim mentality. Or when you went to the academia and you noticed all these ways that women sabotage each other, you decided to dive right into it, into research, and that became a book. And such a helpful resource for women around the world to understand that first, they're not alone, they're not crazy, this is definitely happening.
Oh, yeah.
With so many other women around them, and created the actionable steps so that we can follow these guidelines and create a better reality for ourselves. And I find this really fascinating and empowering, just hearing about your experience and how you were navigating these adversities and challenges in your life. So thank you so much for sharing and being open to this.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious about, in the course of your journey, what support system you had, like what influenced you taking this power mindset of I can do this, and let me push back and understand what it is that I can actually do to improve.
Yeah. I think, the support systems mostly is my mom and my sisters. And like I said, my dad passed when I was 23. And that was I think that for us as a family, that was a pivotal moment. We weren't expecting it. And it was very sad. And even 30 years later, I'm not a mathematician, 28 years later, it can really, really sadden me to think about it. And I think there's a couple things that came out of that. First of all, we realized that life is not a dress rehearsal, as my sister's husband says. And we say that all the time. It's kind of become a family mantra. Life ain't no dress rehearsal. The second thing that came out of that was that I think, honestly, my spiritual upbringing, we grew up in Christian Science, and Christian Science is, it's not Scientology, but what it is it kind of aligns, and some Christian scientists might disagree with me on this, but to me, my dad was a quantum physics, buff. He was really into science. He was really into physics. He has a very interesting history. He was in the CIA. We later learned that after he died. So he had a life experience that we didn't even know anything about. And when he died, all those things kind of came to light. What also came to light was that life is short, that you can really work really, really hard and do all the things you're supposed to do and still die in the end anyway. That, for me, was the biggest lesson. I can't speak for my sisters, but for me, all I saw was this man worked his ass off his entire life. And, I feel like he let fear and depression and this idea of success take him down. And he didn't die of suicide, but he died in a way that was not taking care of yourself and knowing that you're not taking care of yourself and not getting the help, the mental health that he needed. And so your life is cut short. And then you don't have the ability to meet your grandchildren, to all these things for what? And so for me, I have lived my life now since I was 23, living on the edge of life and grabbing it, and just shaking the shit out of it, I think of it like a dog with a bone, like just chewing it and shaking the shit out of life, and so like you have to, because you could be dead tomorrow. And so that was one thing that came out of that. And I think that honestly was the thing that moved my life in a totally different direction. I no longer was looking constantly for security and safety. I like it, and I like stability sometimes, but I also feel like, as someone that's neurodivergent too, that gets boring really quickly. And so why not shake it up a bit all the time? And it also helped me become more of a support system with my sisters, so that we become this family that has become really close, and we get along really well. And we also have a lot of opinions about what the other ones are doing. But it did solidify that relationship into that support system. So I feel like I have that safety net for when, I make these big risks. And definitely right now, even in Portugal, it's hard. It's not easy. My business for the first time, and I think we'll talk about this, right? Like what that means to be an entrepreneur. It's super scary. If you crave and need stability, it's probably not for you unless you have a partner. And I think my mom and I were talking about this last night. If you have a partner and you have a support system that way, it can make or break what you're able to do. I don't have a partner. I'm a single mom of a 15-year-old. And so everything relies on me. And so in a way, you really don't have a choice. Like, you have to go and do things you don't want to do to make sure that your child is provided for. And so I'm taking these risks, and I'm also modeling for her how to take these risks, but how to do it in a responsible way. But also, again, life ain't no dress rehearsal. You have got to live your life, and you have to take those risks, and you have to move across the world. And I think especially, and the reason why I started Joy Abroad was because for American women especially, it seems a little bit harder because we're an ocean away, and we're also trained in the U.S. to see success as one particular path. And even though we have innovative spirit, and the U.S. culture, I think, does curate that, it also curates this idea that you have to work and work and work and work, and money is everything, and your identity is locked to your career path and what success looks like. And that happened to my dad, and I don't want that to happen to me. And so I feel like coming across the ocean, for American women in particular, it might seem like that's not possible. I think for European women, it's a little easier because y'all are already over here, and you have already probably crossed borders several times, and because it's smaller. But in the U.S., it's so vast, we're not encouraged to really learn languages, even though they say they do. Most of us have to really work double hard to actually access a language and be able to practice it and all that, because it's a little bit harder in the U.S., especially with our educational system. It's just not encouraged as much. So there's all those things to think about. But I do feel like the risk taking, you have to do it, because once you take that one risk, like for me, going to China was the biggest risk. I went by myself with $40 in my pocket. I know. And that was really dumb, but it was actually fine. I worked it out, and so I found a couple jobs and I cobbled it together. I had a university job, so I did have a reason to be there. But for, a couple of weeks, I didn't have any money. And so I found a quick teaching job to teach English. I found something at the Canadian Embassy. I found something at Nokia. So it was a small little network of expats that I could find something and survive. And so I thought, well, if I can do that, and if I can go and travel to Tibet, or to all these places I was able to go to while I was there, I can do anything. So I think that helps. So I think if you take that one big, huge risk and you survive it and you think, well, what's the worst that can happen? And if that happens, okay, then what? But like, you can't let that get in the way of taking the risk.
I love this. Thank you so much for sharing. There's so much to unpack. It is definitely a really transformative experience when you get so close to death.
Yeah.
And when you are very close to the edge, you have no other choice rather than choose to move forward with it and understand the fragility of your own life and fragility of our own perceived identities and boxes that we put ourselves in, and decide if you want to live your life differently, and then move after it. There is this quote that I really like. They say, people only change if the pain of the transformation is less than the pain of staying where they are.
Yes, I love that.
And this is incredible how you took your own pain and transformed it in a way which is actually nourishing and empowering you to move forward. And I would love to specifically maybe start doubling down on this idea of identity that you mentioned, the identity of your father that was linked to his job, the identity of the woman that you work with, that is sometimes can be limiting to their actual potential and actual self-realization. And I would love to ask you how you're working with your own different identities. Like, did you have this identity shifts and how you were navigating them? For example, detaching the identity of your professional life, of the teacher, to the identity of somebody who works in a corporate, to the identity of a woman, a white woman, a woman in China, a woman in Portugal, however you want to speak about it.
Yeah. I think when we think about identity, you typically will, and this is kind of something that I look at, is like when you walk into a room, you get to decide at that point what parts of yourself, some parts of yourself, me being a white woman in my early 50s, there's nothing I can do about that, right? That's what you're seeing. And there's certain other things I can't, change. But you get to decide what parts of yourself are you going to highlight and what parts are you going to hide. And for me, I also identify as queer. And so that, I typically will pull that back a bit. Depends, like where I am. If I go into a queer safe space, I'm all out there. And, that's when I probably feel my best. But many times in the corporate world, I will pull that back. Being neurodivergent, I don't think I really accepted that part. I didn't even know what it was, honestly. I have ADHD. It makes total sense now. and I don't think I realized how much a part of that actually dictates the risks that I have taken in my life, and the times that I have shied away from things, and the times that I have been shut down by other people because I go off on a tangent, or I'm not paying attention, or I'm not paying attention to a particular detail that for ADHDers, it doesn't interest me, so I'm not going to pay attention to it. I have to constantly keep my focus and almost snap my fingers to make sure I'm focusing on what somebody is telling me. The amount of headspace that takes. So when I enter a room, it's like, what parts of myself am I going to share? What's going to benefit me when I go into this room, and what are the things that are probably going to be seen as, prohibitive? So what am I going to pull back a bit? I think if people can start to understand how each parts, and this is what I try to do in my workshops, how each parts of our identity, and we think of it like a wheel, there are parts that you have access to more opportunities with and parts that you don't, parts that you have privilege with, parts that you don't. And if you can figure out what those privileges are and how to utilize them and how to leverage them, and then also to look at, if you want to highlight something like neurodivergence, then how do you highlight that in a way that you do it from a position of privilege? So if I can do something like this, like on a podcast or a stage, where I'm speaking and people see me as an authority, I can start to unveil my ADHD a bit more than I would have as, a teacher or an employee where it might have been used against me. And everything also depends on time and space, because I didn't come out as queer until I was 40. I mean, I did to other people, but not to my family. And it took the courage of my cousin to do that first. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to hang on the coattails. I'm like, well, actually, since you opened the door, I'm going to open the door for myself as well. And I think the two of us have a really strong bond because of that. And so I think it's important to look at what parts of your identity do you want to authentically bring to the forefront? And how can you help others that also share that identity? You know, so for women in particular, you know, I've always known what that means to be a woman. It's very clear to me. And for my daughter, raising a daughter too, she navigates this world a little differently than I did. I was more shy. She's very gregarious. She's way more confident than I ever was. But it's also because I've taught her what that means to explicitly be a woman in these times. And my mom did kind of the same for us, but she did it more from a survival aspect of how do you survive being a woman, especially in the South in the United States. So just, I think, really understanding where you are time and place, where you are geographically, where you are in your own comfortability of showing your full self, your authentic self. And then what can you do for others? And what can you do in the service of others once you understand your own positionality and your own places where you can leverage that, you know, that particular identity? So that to me is the most interesting conversations to have. And I do that in my corporate workshops and all my training and the stage, you know, whenever I do a keynote or any kind of stage work or podcast. It's what can I bring to the forefront that maybe somebody else needs to hear? Maybe somebody else is like, oh my God, I felt that way too. And I don't want to talk about that because maybe on LinkedIn, everybody looks like it's all success. And, you know, Facebook and I don't follow social media. And I think that's one of your questions later, because I don't care. I just simply don't care what other people are doing. People will send me TikToks and I have one and I'm supposed to post to it, but I just don't care. And I know that people are like, oh, I'm addicted to social media and and I'm just like, I just want to live my life. And I don't feel like I need to showcase it. The only times that I do, and I do mostly on LinkedIn, is because of my business. And if I didn't have my business, I would never be on any of those things. But I also like, well, what's, you know, Joy, if you're going to try to promote women, and if you're going to be authentically yourself and you're going to just be authentically yourself on social media. Again, like, I don't care. And I show it. And I know that a lot of people correct me all the time when I say that. And there's actually somebody that I met from the Netherlands, a young person, 25, and they said, I'm not on social media at all, and neither are my friends. And I was like, that's fantastic. I love that for you. And I really wish that more people would get off of it and curate something a little bit better for yourself, because I think we're allowing outside forces to shape us. And that's maybe one of the reasons why I don't do it. I don't think I'm that actually strategic about that, but it's more that it doesn't provide me fulfillment. It doesn't provide entertainment for me. It just overwhelms me. And I just see like, oh my God, no wonder people are stressed out and upset and depressed, because as I'm scrolling, I'm looking at all these people that are doing all these amazing things. And you can't help, even knowing that you know that this is curated and it's probably not real, you can't help but still feel that way. And we all want to belong, and we all want to feel important and special and like we're worth something in the world. But how can we compete with all these other people in the world? So that's my experience. I know people have different experiences. I know that it also gives a voice to, for me too, I watch mostly the ADHD videos. I watch mostly different perspectives, or ones that either affirm my identity that's always been marginalized, whether that's a queer identity, neurodivergent woman, etc. But I also have done my own work long enough to know, like, I don't need those affirmations anymore.
And I think this journey is so important to share, right, with others, starting from the very first step through to where you are now, completely accepting your identities and understanding them so well. But so many times we just do not have the capacity or the opportunity to take this inner risk to accept that, oh, I have this identity in me. I might be neurodivergent, or I might be queer, or yes, I know that I'm queer, but how can I come out to my family or friends about this? It takes such an incredible amount of just courage to be able to first understand and accept this about yourself, and then go and make this known to other people. And social media is definitely not helping with this. Social media is, I'm seeing it evolving, is maybe not helping you to discover your own identity, but rather imposing some socially accepted identities that you want to play out, that you want to belong to, but you have sometimes very limited connection to it authentically. You want to put on this mask, and then you do it, but then you struggle inside because it's just not yours.
Yeah. And I think that I struggle with even making little videos and things like that, because I'm like, oh, I'm like, somebody just ask me a question, I'll just answer the question. Like that's, and so I had my daughter try to do that, and then that didn't really work because it was kind of boring. But I think with what I watch with her, I told her the other day, I was like, you know what I see, and she doesn't like this question when I say this, but I go, what I'm seeing is that you're looking through other people's lives, and where's yours? And when are you going to start living yours? Because right now, all I see is you're living other people's lives by scrolling. Yeah. And where's your life in all of this? Like, when are you going to go out and live your own life without looking at this thing that, and if I'm on the train or, in any public area, everybody's on their phone. And I guess maybe this is me being older and just remembering a time when there was no internet either, and none of this was there, and you were forced just to look out the window or to sit with yourself for a moment, or to have some, reflective time or meditative time, or just a time where your brain is just not constantly being stimulated. And I think that our anxiety levels and all of these things are raised because of that. And it's okay to give your brain a rest. And you don't have to catch up with everybody and everything all the time. And I think even the WhatsApp groups are out of control. And I see all this constant need to keep up, and it's so unhealthy for us. And so I think one of the reasons I moved to Europe, but even though I think it's happening in Europe too, obviously, but at least here, I feel this like ease that I can breathe. I told somebody the other day that I have slept better here than I ever did in the States. And I think the energy, I'm really sensitive to energy levels and frequencies and all of that. And if I get a vibe that something's not right, I will immediately get out. And I get that feeling with social media. Like it immediately just puts me on a vibe that I don't like. And so same thing if I go into a room, if I go on a bus, if I go anywhere, I'm really sensitive. And most neurodivergent people are. And then you layer on other identities on top of that. You have to be so sensitive and careful of your own space and your own well-being, and making sure that you are in spaces that nurture you and not. And I think the courage that you mentioned earlier comes from a place of constantly checking the vibe, checking my vibe, and tuning in with myself. And I think I was a super reflective kid, and I was the last born too. I'm the youngest. And so the youngest has a tendency to be left alone a lot. My sisters went off to college. I was by myself. I would go down to the water and hang out by the water. And I think part of that is part of that self-reflective nature, and constantly searching for myself and digging deep, in my teens, doing that. And checking different identities, wearing all black for my 8th grade year, and then coming back and then like wearing bows and weird looking Laura Ashley dresses. And when I moved to Texas, just trying on different things, different hairstyles, different diet, I was just constantly trying different identities. And I think all of that's really healthy and good. And so I think when we see children doing that, please let them try on all those different identities. And a lot of the biggest mistake I think parents do is they live their lives through their children. And what I do with my daughter, and I think it's working well, she's a pretty well-adjusted child, is I say, well, how did that make you feel when you did that? And what does that mean to you? Because I think the biggest hurdle for children is when the parents shame them for something or say, why did you do that? Or that's not right. You shouldn't do that. I mean, they have to investigate who they are and what is right for them. And for them to figure out who they are truly, you have to ask them those questions rather than ever pointing the finger and saying, that's not right, you shouldn't do that. And I think that I parent her the way in which I wanted to be parented. My mom, I love her dearly, but she came from a time that was hard for women. From, growing up in the 50s, and women have to be skinny, beautiful, quiet, not arrogant, not, all of those tropes that we hear all the time about how women should be behaving. And so I think from an early age, I was like, oh, I hated that word lady. I was like, I'm not a lady. And my mom's like, oh my God, you have to be a lady. I'm like, I'm not a lady. It's like,
100%. And this is so interesting because this concept of identity, as I'm hearing it, is something not static in the sense that you need to keep discovering who you really are and what identities truly belong to you, and maybe what you think about them in your past as you discovered it is no longer ringing true even a year or 3 years from now. So this is the constant process of checking with yourself and asking these difficult questions about what am I really feeling about this now?
Yeah.
And what am I feeling about this now? And 5 minutes later and 10 minutes later, and how is this changing? And really learning about your inner emotional world so that you are able to make better decisions. Because what are emotions? These are not our enemies that we have to push and always feel happy, right? These are the important signals that our system is giving us about the nature of our current reality and our relationships, so that we can change and make ourselves create ourselves a better world for us. And it's amazing that you're doing this with the daughter. And definitely this is the blueprint for the parents to have this inquiry process and being genuinely curious about their children and teaching them how to do it for themselves as well.
Yeah, because I think if you die, what have you left your child with? I mean, I know I keep going back to death, but it's like I want her to have a sense of self and to listen to her intuition, especially as women, because we're told not to listen to our intuition. We're constantly told what to think and feel. And, oh, you don't really feel that way. Or, oh, that's really, and we're gaslit constantly. So I don't want her to be wavering on the way that she feels and listening to herself, because society will always come in and say, oh, actually, no, you should really feel this way. And I want her to listen to her intuition, to cultivate her intuition, and to immediately recognize what doesn't feel right for her. And I think so many times we are trained as women to stop listening to our intuition. That's one of the biggest things I think that we could reclaim for ourselves is our intuition. That and our forgiveness of ourselves. The shame, that comes with all the things, right, of being a woman. We're not pretty enough, we're not healthy enough, we're not, whatever. It's dumb. And I think for me too, you mentioned happiness, like my coach said this to me. She goes, why, you're always trying to make yourself feel better. And I go, oh my God, that's so true. Just be sad. It's okay. Like I try to talk myself out of being sad, or I try to talk myself out of being angry. And I'm just like, just feel it. Feel it. This is how you're feeling right now. It's okay. Like, just let it go. You're not happy right now. And I even had to tell myself yesterday, because I think as an entrepreneur too, I'm constantly hustling, and it's exhausting because I'm like, okay, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And especially neurodivergence, like we want to do everything all the time, fully. And then we get bored halfway through it. And then we abandon it. I can't tell you how many accounts of like habit share or apps that we start. It's so funny because we'll start like an app for ADHD, and then I'll quit halfway through it because I'm like, they clearly don't know ADHD people because I've already quit doing it, and I have all these apps on my phone that I've never completed the quiz just to get the app to start. So, and I would shame myself for that constantly. I mean, I think for me right now, the biggest shame spirals that I can get into is my ADHD. And starting a project, or the rejection sensitivity dysphoria is the RSD is really loud, and you couple that with being a queer woman, ADHD, and then being a little bit older, and then just coming from in the U.S. coming from a Southern family, all those things compound to make the shame spiral really deep, and I have to try to recognize that immediately and be like, oh, this is shame. And, oh, this is depression. This is sadness. And I talk to myself now like I'm a child. And I'm like, that's okay, Joy. It's okay. You can feel that. Feel it. It's fine. Do you want to feel this way for a long time or a little bit of time? And allow myself the amount of time that I need, too, which I never did before. Now I'm just like, this is going to take a little bit longer than I thought. Or, wow, I'm feeling like total shit right now. My finances, I'm trying to really work on my finances not being a reflection of who I am and my success. Because right now in the States, especially doing diversity, equity, inclusion, it was banned. So most people I know have gone bankrupt and do DEI work in particular. So many people have left their jobs, mostly women of color, women that were doing this work for women. And then that what's happening in the States is trickling over to Europe. And so budgets are being cut, the tariffs and the inflation and all of these things that are causing budgets to be more and more constrictive. It's affecting everybody. And the people that's affecting the most are women and people of color, or anybody from a marginalized background. So I think all of that is that societal stuff that's happening that's beyond your control. And so the shame can really get deep and dark and heavy if we don't start to recognize what part of this is my responsibility and what part of this is the responsibility of society, and what can I do right now to take the next best step to move from that so that I feel productive and changing myself to change society. And the more that we change just our own journey and who we are and how we're navigating the world, and being more authentically ourselves and taking those risks and having the courage to do that, then the more other people will see that and be like, oh, maybe I can do that too. And so I think that when we talk about like the courage that it takes to do these things, I think, yes, it's about us and having that self-love and that self-awareness to take the courageous risks, but it's also in service to others. If we could see it that way, if we could position it that way, it's also in service of others to say, you can do this too. And that's why I started Joy Abroad, because I thought, because first of all, everybody kept visiting me, and I was like, I should start charging all these people that, I don't even really know that are asking me questions, want to take me out to coffee and ask questions. So now I thought, well, I'm going to offer an Airbnb experience. So this is what an entrepreneurial hustle needs to do, is my corporate stuff is a little bit low right now. So I'm like, all right, how can I pivot? I'm going to offer an Airbnb experience to go and have pastel de nata and blanc. And people can pick my brain about, what that means to be an expat and what the visa process and all that looks like. Then I'm going to start, Joy Abroad, and that's going to be an arm of it. And so and that's really fun for me to see like all the ways that I could have that tie into my business of cross-cultural communication. And so I think, okay, well, I can offer Joy Abroad, and that's helping mostly American women, but any women move abroad and what that looks like and the coaching that goes with that. And then I have all of these vetted services that I can recommend them to. So that I was like, oh, perfect. That's exactly what I needed when I moved here. And then the Airbnb experience can be a part of that. And I could even have that, generate leads from there. So that's one piece. The other piece is the corporate stuff. And that's, women supporting women, things coming from the TEDx and the book. And then it's also going into corporate companies and doing training and learning and development around how to, have cross-cultural communication with people from different backgrounds, whether that be nationality or genders or ability or LGBTQI status or, even language, talking about language. So there's all of these things. And so I've taken all of my experience throughout my life and offered this, like, if you think of it like a fan of services and things that I can do. And so for me, that is exciting and that's fun. And I love doing that. And that's when I get energized. It's when I have to fit into a corporate mold of trying to explain it in certain ways that I start to get like, ugh, like, can't you just see that I can do all these things? And why not? Like, and sometimes people, and I think if there's entrepreneurs listening, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to fail. The joy abroad may not work. I have tried multiple things that have completely fell flat on their face. When I was in college, I tried selling baskets to my sorority sisters. Nobody wanted them. I started trying to sell cookies to a bake shop. Some people, I didn't make any money. My granddaddy ate most of the cookies when I was at home. Most of my family was eating all my profits. So, but I think you have to continually try and try and try and not beat yourself up when you fail. Because failure is honestly the best thing that can happen. And I didn't know that growing up. And I think that's a huge lesson, is you got to take the risk. You got to fail. If you go bankrupt, money, if we have an abundant mindset and we know that money can be like water, it can flow in, it flows in and out of our lives. What do you have to, I dog sit, I do everything I possibly can. There's a great woman that can't wait to watch her documentary, Susan Powter. In the 1990s, she was this huge fitness guru. And I remember her, and she was really a lot of energy. And then she disappeared, like people do, right? Well, it turns out she's working for Uber Eats in Las Vegas. She had this multi-million-dollar fortune, lost it all, and then now does Uber Eats. And now she's had a resurgence. And so there's this whole series that I want to start with my newsletter on LinkedIn is about the Phoenix Rising. And when do you have a Phoenix Rising moment? Because we all have had those Phoenix Rising moments. We've all just been completely burned to a crisp and then had to rise from the ashes. And I think the challenge should be, how many times can you do that? And how quickly can you turn it around and not see it as a failure, but to see it as a Phoenix Rising moment. And then be like, all right, well, that didn't work. Let's move on. What else can we do? Okay, I'll dog sit for a little while. So I'm schlepping dogs around in the rain yesterday. I'm doing what I have to do. And I think that if you can give up parts of your identity that won't allow you to do grunt work or won't allow you to do things that you don't really want to do, but to get where you're going, to figure out how can I leverage this down point in my life to leverage it to what I really want. And so not to get mired in the little things, but to constantly see your life as this big open landscape that you can paint whatever you want. And you don't have to continue to do the things that you used to do. You can always do something new and different, or you have to do some grunt work for a little bit. But that's okay.
That's powerful, because what I'm hearing is you have the experience and a skill now in taking this difficult emotion like shame or sadness or depression and then transforming it through reparenting yourself and essentially taking care of your inner child who is experiencing these difficult emotions and becoming this adult that this child really needs, asking, okay, we're experiencing this right now. What can we do?
Yeah.
Right? What it is that is actually going to help us feel more secure, safer, more joyful, what it is that brings us joy in this life, and what are the tools that currently are available for us, and what are the resources, and knowing that everything is transient and this situation is also our experience right now. And then in the next moment, it can be transformed into some different type of experience that we will create for ourselves.
Yeah.
So again, what I'm hearing since the beginning of this conversation is you are not allowing yourself to fall into the victim mindset, but instead you are taking these difficult experiences as a fuel for the future action and for alignment of what it is that you actually want to do. And without this, Joy Abroad wouldn't be live right now.
Yeah. I mean, who knows, right? And I think there's two things that I did. And I know one of your questions was kind of about the mental health stuff. And I think I do watch a lot of YouTube. That is my vice. But what I do is I look at frequencies. And then I do a lot of, there's a Louise Hay, part of Hay House and all that. I think it's AI, but I'm not really sure. I think it's her voice, but I think it's an AI. I don't know, but I don't really care. I'm just like, it's just helping me right now. But I think finding things that will help you in the morning, get out of your funk. And super important, the first thing in the morning is to make sure you get your mindset straight, because that window of time in the morning is so important, to not check your phone, to make sure that even before I open my eyes, I'm just like, how do you want to feel today? Okay. And like sometimes not to say I don't get into victim mode. Oh, I can be a good victim. Everything is wrong. Everybody's against me. I can totally go down that road. But then I will try to pivot out of it, because I'm like, what is this doing for you right now? Nothing. Feel your victimness, be a victim for a little bit, but then let's move on. Because, and so I definitely think you got to feel the feelings. And if you're feeling a victim, and we are victims, I mean, women, we are victims, but how is that going to feed the change? So is that going to feed the change? Yes, it's important for us to talk about how we are victims, so that people that are not victims understand, the oppressors understand. So I think that you can hold two things at once. And I've talked about this a lot, where it's like, you can hold that society is unfair and that we live in a patriarchal society and there are oppressors and oppression, but we also have privilege and we also have abundance. And so we get to decide how much of this is going to weigh in on our day-to-day decision-making and the actions that we make for that day and the behaviors that we choose to go with. So I think that that's important, that first time in the morning, to really think through, how am I going to reset for today? Today's a new day. Anything can happen today. Allow anything to happen today. Allow the day to take you into not so much a positive direction, but a direction in which will feed your soul, rather than, the constant hustle or the things that you think you have to do. So today, like, I just took the day off. I mean, I have to write my news. I've got stuff to do. I've got a lot to do. But I was just like, today I don't feel like that. Today I'm just going to let the day ride out, see what happens. I'm going to get an espresso after this, go get some Nespresso pods, see where the path takes me for the rest of the day. And I can do that as an entrepreneur. There's days where I'm like, I just have to take today off and relax and rest and decide I don't have to hustle today. Tomorrow, maybe I'll do 3 little hustles. And then, but I think it's important to allow yourself time to live your feelings, to live your life, to forgive yourself and parent yourself the way that you needed to be parented, because we're still really inner children inside. We're still children. And I might parent my daughter the way I wish I was parented, but I also have to parent myself. And part of that is that forgiveness factor of not being so hard on myself. So
thank you so much. This is the powerful journey of self-learning, self-acceptance, taking the risks, holding yourself in these difficult emotions which arise when you are taking these risks, and transforming them into something else which brings you a more pleasant experience of your life, right? Which is the one and only that we really have to live now. Otherwise, nobody else is going to live it for us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing with us your journey. As we're wrapping up, what is one question that you're still asking yourself and maybe you don't have the answer to yet?
I have something exciting going on. I can't quite say it yet, but I am trying to listen to my intuition on a decision that I have to make by tomorrow. And it's a pretty big one. And I think that allowing myself to be open to another new risk and just exploring it is a really good thing to do. So I think to combat any of our fears, one of the things to do is to look at all the ways in which you might grow from an experience. Even though you think about the logistics of it, it might be hard. And it might be like, oh, this is a lot, it might overwhelm you. But to think through what's on the other side of that, of a hard decision, or maybe sometime that you're feeling down, what's on the other side of that? And if you can get through into that kind of Phoenix rising moment, there's going to be another thing on the other side. And so I think we have to constantly think about, we might be down right now, but there's another side. There's a lighter side you have to go through this in order to get to that other side.
Beautiful.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
definitely. What I'm hearing is whenever we're going through something, it's important to respect this process.
Yes.
And take our time. When something is brewing, something intuitive is starting to nudge us, we will take our time to just sit with it and see what it brings and what unfolds without necessarily rushing or pushing or blaming or...
Yeah, and just allowing things to unfold. I think that's really hard. We want to take action, to allow things to just unfold.
Beautiful. Joy, it's been a true pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. That's been peppered with so much courage and openness and vulnerability, intuitive feeling and understanding that everything happens in your own time. But at the same time, we got to make it happen also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to explore Joy's work, her book From Sabotage to Support, her cultural agility framework, the Joy Abroad service, her keynotes, or her support for women navigating major transitions, we will link everything in our show notes. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who might need it. And if you're looking for mental health support, therapy, and guidance, we're also always available at somatictherapypractice.com. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. What we just spoke about, basically, after the end of the official episode, is that how important it is to move forward from this conversation of the successful success with entrepreneurs who are saying, okay, I just did this, I just went to this networking event, I just sent all this few emails, I just grinded, and then I came with my success, right? But what exactly happens in this process, in your head? And I believe that for all the entrepreneurs out there, the very relatable thing that is happening is the constant sense of almost existential dread that things are not going to work out, that we will run out of money, that we will not be able to pay our rent, that we will not be able to pay our salaries. And this constant conversation of, oh, shit, fuck, inside is just really present, right? And it's really real, and it's important for us to talk about what exactly we're experiencing, so that as other entrepreneurs we can support each other and be like, yeah, like I know exactly what you're talking about, I know exactly how you're struggling at the moment, so what can I do to actually help you, rather than give just unsolicited advice, which would be very obvious, and obviously we thought about it.
Yeah, so, like, oh, have you tried going to that networking event, or have you tried getting a coach? You're like, I can't pay the bills to get the coach, so you're going to look for all the free stuff that you can. What was really helpful for me one time, I had two pieces of advice that helped. One of my friends who has a really successful business said, it's feast or famine. Sometimes I just lived on credit cards for 6 months or almost to a year. And then the next year I paid them off. I was able to pay them off. I'm like, oh God, that's really unsettling, And she's like, yeah, I didn't make any income for 6 months. I'm like, oh my God. But it was helpful because I was like, okay, so I'm not the only one. The other thing that somebody said, I ended up paying, I think like $16,000 to hire a speaker agent. It did not work at all. That money down the drain. And that put me in a huge financial hole. And I also hired a business coach that was very expensive. And those two things basically put me into huge financial hardship. And I think the oh shit, oh fuck is like a daily mantra. You're like, oh my God. But what I held on to was and is, what else can I do? So if the shit hits the fan and you need to have a plan B, and like, okay, if I go completely bankrupt and if I go through all of my retirement, which I did, I have liquidated my retirement to live here. So that's important for people to know. What was helpful is another friend told me, she's like, oh yeah, my retirement's totally gone. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I'm not the only one that has totally liquidated my 401k. And I was like, I guess I'm never going back to the States because I don't have any money there. There's nothing there for me. If that happens, what's your plan B? And so for me, my plan B has been to dog sit because that's easy. And actually what's crazy is that's what's been keeping me afloat is dog sitting. Thank God I love dogs. Thank God I love animals and I'm really good with them because I did that when I was a professor my first years because I had all this credit card debt and I even ended up taking my ex-husband to Costa Rica and Italy and from dog sitting. So don't knock dog sitting. The other thing is starting new businesses, starting the Airbnb experience. Now, a lot of people kept giving me that free advice, like, oh, well, have you thought about this? But the problem with all that free advice is that it's all these different directions. And you're like, how can anybody make a sustainable living if I'm going in 1,000 different directions? I'm pepper spraying 1,000 different things. So I think if you can figure out a through line for what's going to generate money right now and put a little bit of effort into that one through line of what's going to generate money. And I actually work with ChatGPT on this, and I know it's not good to do that, but my daughter's really upset with me about ChatGPT, but I was like, listen, okay. So, but what I do is I'm like, help me generate money right now. Like I need to figure out how to pay the bills right this second. So the dog sitting thing helps, but sometimes it gives me things like, well, have you tried doing a quick impact webinar flyer? Nobody wants that. That didn't work. But I would say try to think about quick cash, sell some stuff. My mom went and sold some gold. And I don't have any gold, but it's all fake gold. So it's not worth anything. But, I did sell some designer items that I had. And actually one of them, some boots that I sold went through and that paid for my groceries. So, I mean, there's stuff like that. Like you have to be super scrappy. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to be scrappy. And sometimes our egos get in the way of that. So I would just say, be as scrappy as possible, but also try to think through that plan B before it gets to plan B, before you have to implement it.
Definitely. So important to share these realities with everyone so that we know that it's not just the successful success out there. Mm-hmm. And this is the very real life. And indeed, as you said, our egos can get hurt, but what these egos get fed by, right? Mm-hmm. And is this real? Is this based on your current reality or not? So very, very important to keep this grounded. One thing that helps me in this journey is I keep remembering that barista is also a great job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes.
I mean, who doesn't love to serve others?
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, the hardship with some of the customers. But like the other day, I was picking up dog poop in the middle of the rain last night. And I was like, man, I'm a PhD picking up dog poop. I'm like, but it's paying the bills, Joy. Just pick it up and be fine with it. Like that's the mantra that I have in my head, and okay. I think that honestly, that was my dad's problem too, is he was a PhD and I think things were above him he was above things, And my mom was like, oh, sometimes he would lord that PhD thing. I'm a doctor. I shouldn't have. Blah, 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 blah. But that can be your biggest enemy, honestly, is your ego. And so I definitely think that sometimes it just sucks. Sometimes you're going to have to self-promote. Sometimes you're going to just have to do things you don't want to do.
And that's where your internal growth comes in, mm-hmm. because as a result of it, you become so much more real and raw and sturdy as a leader.
Empathic.
And empathic.
Yeah.
Yes. and so much stronger in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But during the process, it's fuck shit.
Yeah. And I know. And like, I mean, you know, there's definitely times that I owe bills and like, I'm like, well, I can't pay it right now. And I'm just and that hurts me inside that I can't pay something. But then I try to energetically think, what does that feel like when I pay that thing?
Yeah.
Whoa, that feels so good. You know, I can drop it off, check it off my budget list. And I try to energetically put myself in that place. But that's hard.
Yeah.
But I try to do that. And I think the whole mindset thing and everybody like, I think the best advice when my coach said, stop trying to make yourself feel better, that was actually really helpful because I was like, yeah, that's true. Like I keep trying to put, you know, rose-colored glasses on everything. And actually this is just kind of some shit right now. And I'm just going to have to accept that this is some shit right now.
Yeah.
So.
Totally. And I believe that so many of our listeners and viewers are going to resonate with this. So it's so important that we bring this point home and share our real life situations. But Joy, thank you so much again. I'm really grateful that we went off this tangent even after our official episode was over. And I wish all of us the strength to keep going in direction that is most aligned with us and remove all the barriers that we put for ourselves in our heads that prohibit us from moving to the most happiest and joyful version of our life so far. Yeah. So have an amazing one. Take care.
Thank you.